Hi, everyone. I'm Janelle, Estes, Chief Insights Officer at UserTesting.
And I'm Andy MacMillan, CEO at UserTesting.
And today we're very excited to have Julia Austin joining us on the Human Insight podcast. Julia is a senior lecturer at Harvard Business School's Rock Center for Entrepreneurship, where she currently teaches startup operations. Julia is also a certified executive coach, board member, startup advisor, and angel investor. Welcome to the show, Julia. We're so happy to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I visited your classroom at Harvard Business School as a guest lecturer, and I saw firsthand how much your students really love you. They adore you. And for our first Insights segment, we asked our global contributor network about their favorite teachers, what makes them a great teacher, and that person's lasting impact on them. So let's listen to what they had to say.
So I'm thinking back a little while to when I finished what we call university in Australia. My favourite lecturer was the one that made it, I guess, the most engaging and the most fun. And yeah, the ones I liked were the ones that kind of knew their stuff inside out and were happy to go off on a tangent, were happy to talk about the news of the day almost and make it current.
So what made them memorable is how they tend to make a monotonous or boring subject interesting.
He just made it interesting. He made you want to learn and read more Shakespeare. He just had a gift for that, and I was blessed to have a teacher like that in college.
I remember my favorite professor, and she was a professor of Black history. She really made the learning come alive, but not only relating what we learned to Black history, but also relating it to the world around us.
What are the qualities of a good professor and learning experience? Okay, so the good qualities would be that, even you are strict, but you are respectful to your students and you don't dismiss their challenges.
The most important quality is to be able to make the students actually relate to what they're learning and also be able to enjoy the learning experience. How has that professor and experience influenced your life after college? I mean, it probably taught me to be a bit more open-minded, probably a little more skeptical, a little bit of a better critical thinker.
I think that even though I did not go into that particular field of for my career, I feel like that the experiences he brought out the shyness in me. Yeah, I was very shy, but he, let me realize I had a voice. That my stories matter to the things that I thought was important to report on. And he listened to that and he helped me find my voice. He gave me the confidence to be the person that I am.
I remember my favorite teacher, who's actually my undergrad and graduate professor, because I went to the same university for both undergrad and grad, Dr. Bill Gribbins. And like what the contributors said, he made the class fun and exciting. The subject matter super relevant to what was happening in the world around us. But also he challenged me in a way that created this like intrinsic motivation to just like do better, do great work. And I thought that was something special that he gave me. So Julia, what were your first impressions of the responses and what are your goals as a teacher?
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed right away from everybody was the consistent, interesting, fun, but also high standards. And that's a balance we all try to strike at HBS of maintaining high standards and high values in the classroom, but also being respectful of our students and their time and who they are as people. So I try very hard to make the content highly relevant, useful. I'm very focused on, especially for the particular course I teach, it's high utility. It's going to be useful for students, less theoretical, but also that it's fun and engaging. And that was definitely something I heard in all of the statements and I think about my own professors going back to my both undergrad and graduate school was those who really expected a lot from me and held the bar really high so that I did my very best, but also made the content very relevant and interesting to me. So I was excited to learn.
Yes, absolutely. So, and what I loved about your course, at least the product management course that I sat in on a few times, was just how practical it was for the students. As you mentioned, there is some theory involved, obviously, but making sure that they have the right ways to approach the problem, they have the right tools and technology, modern day technologies to do their work. Really, really awesome stuff. And right now you're teaching a course about startup operations. So based on the course description, it's another experiential learning experience or course. And can you tell us a little bit more about what the course is and what students walk away with?
Yeah, absolutely. So the course was, it came about because we had more and more students at HBS who were starting their ventures while they were in school, which is a nice thing that they used to have to drop out to do their ventures, their startups, but we were seeing more and more students getting traction while they were in school and needing the foundational skills to get their businesses off the ground beyond product. So while I'm a super product nerd, and we'll talk a lot more about product and what makes product great, all the things that go around that to create a business was what I was seeing. And I also see with the founders that I mentor was missing. So the course is structured around businesses that are actually happening in the schools. So post-ideation phase, primarily those who are either found a space, a real problem to solve that they really want to dig into, all the way through to some are fully venture backed and have employees and actually running their companies while they're in school. So it's a weekly seminar structured course where we spend about an hour doing some sort of content. Could be around product discovery. It could be about talking to customers. It could be financial matters, legal matters, how do you write great job descriptions, all the things that they need to really get their businesses off the ground beyond, including product, but beyond product. And they have weekly deliverables that help move the needle for their businesses. So again, writing a job description or doing a product roadmap or doing things that are highly tactical, but also useful for their companies. And we also do what we call critiques or crits, where after about an hour of content, students, each week we have 4 teams who get up in front of their classmates. And Janelle, I think you saw this in my course too, when I used to teach my product course, and get feedback from their students, which I find whether you're a product manager or whether you're a founder, getting used to asking for feedback and getting feedback is critical. Something that is a muscle that needs to be built, but also a lot of smart people in the room who have great ideas for them, and just getting comfortable having a little humility and starting to get answers from beyond their own very brilliant brains.
I think it's absolutely incredible. Just the idea that there's folks in and around Harvard Business School talking about product management and best practices and how to do this. It's such a long way from where we were when I started. I started in product management maybe 20 years ago. It's been a long time. And we used to talk about how no 2 product managers used to come to the job from the same path. You know, it was sort of this thing people found their way into from all parts of the company, different backgrounds, kind of different perspectives. So it's exciting to hear kind of formalizing to some extent. But from your perspective, both as somebody who's been a product manager and a product leader and as an educator, like what do you think makes a great product manager? Like when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, they're going to be a great product person. Yeah. What characteristics do you think those are?
Yeah, there's sort of 3 fundamental characteristics that I really believe in. They definitely have to have a strong domain understanding. They don't have to be an expert, but really have the aptitude to understand a domain and get up to speed and really familiar with the customer and really be the voice of the customer and be comfortable being in the customer's shoes. I think that's an important skill. They have to have a great EQ, not only to interact with customers, but their ability to build relationships across an organization, whether it's an early stage organization or more mature, from designers and engineers to product leaders, strategists, higher level, down to all the support folks, right? Really being able to navigate an organization, understanding everybody has a different view of the customer and the product, and being comfortable context switching a lot between all of those. And then I think the last piece is being comfortable with the organization's mission and having it be a good fit for them. So what I've seen is great product managers landing in a company that's really not a great fit for them. Maybe it's too early stage or too big, where they've gone too narrow and they need to do something with more breadth. So being comfortable in the particular organization is as important as their skills. I do think the personal piece and that ability to context switch and be engaging with lots of different audiences is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that after joining your course the first time, I think it was Andy that I actually talked to afterwards, and I was like, "You're not going to believe it. There's a course at HBS around product management. Like, this is amazing." And also, doubly amazing is that I remember when you had me come in to talk about the importance of customer feedback and show them the
Mm,
user testing platform and give them a demo. It was sort of like this wasn't a new concept. Like talking to your customers was not a new concept for them in that course. It was something that had been integrated into the course from day one. And that was super impressive as well. So that was sort of like my own personal, I don't know, nirvana moment going to your course and recognizing both of those things.
I still
So,
do
I
that,
mean,
by the way, Janelle. Sorry, I'm going to jump in because we still do that even
yeah.
in this course. I am pretty shameless with pushing my students to get out and talk with customers and get feedback. And I'm a strong advocate for feedback never stopping. I'll get this question, especially from founders early on, of when do I stop talking to my customers and getting feedback and start building my product? And I'm like never. You need to be talking all the time. And I make it required that they turn in examples and not just interviews, but actual scrappy tests and engagement or ethnographic studies or whatever they're doing with customers all the time is it, again, building that muscle. If you have to interact with your customers, it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, in addition to product management, you've also got a very rich background in entrepreneurship, business strategy. You led innovation at places like VMware and Akamai, and you're advising countless startups, including Human First and We the People. So I'll ask you the age-old question that everyone sort of wonders. How do you know when you have achieved product market fit?
Oh yes, such a hard question. So I believe product market fit means you're building something that is having a repeatable user experience outcome, right? And you're seeing some amount of exponential growth. So it's happening and over again. Your customers almost feel like they can't live without it. Like if you were to suggest we're shutting down, we're not going to be a company anymore, or your product's no longer going to be available, they'd pay almost anything for you to keep it going for them, and with a reasonable size TAM, right? So there's enough people using it and you're seeing that exponential growth. So it often is simpler than most people think. I think PMF for some organizations or some product leaders is this belief it has to be multifaceted, tons of features and capabilities. And when you look at some of the great companies out there that got started where they got PMF, we'll use OTP, We the People, as an example, one of my companies that I've invested in and advised. They had a grand vision for women's body care, but they started with a razor, and that's all it was the razor. And they just made the razor beautiful and appropriate for women's use, and were highly tailored around what we cared about as women. And that was their anchor point, and they just did that excellently and then built something around that. And I do see, whether it's digital or physical product, that miss of what PMF really is. It's not lots of customers paying for lots of customizations or different features. It's one thing that you can do over and over again and do it well to the point that everyone feels like you're foundational for me, whether it's personal or for my business.
I think that's spot on. I heard a founder one time say product market fit is one of those things, if you keep asking yourself if you have it, you don't yet.
Yes, that's
And when you
right.
do, you're like, boy, this is really like, this is moving. So I think that's well framed. One of the things I wanted to ask you a little bit about is, you've done some startup advising and you mentor students that are entering the workforce. I think when we talk about innovation, we sometimes always think about these sort of digital first companies, like the disruptive companies. But there's a lot of companies that are more traditional companies, been around a long time, right? Built their business before the world was digital. But they need to go out now and develop new products and sort of reinvent their current products in the marketplace. So what advice do you give to folks that are either in those roles or thinking about taking one of those roles as they leave HBS, where they're thinking about entering a company that's kind of going more through digital transformation than sort
Right.
of starting off digitally native?
Right. And so first advice I would give is don't do technology for the sake of technology, right? Look for the problem to solve. And again, whether you're a new company or your legacy company, when you think we have to do something digitally, okay, well, what's the problem that needs to be solved? And less about we can do cool things with AI or machine learning or what good for you. But much more important is what lights are going to go on for your customers that they're going to say, like, you finally are solving this pain point for me, right? And then the second piece is go out there and, again, not just talk to them, but experiment, right? This mindset of interviewing versus experimenting is a mistake I see way too often. Again, whether you're a legacy company or whether you're a new company, go try things. Go find your early adopters. If you're a legacy company, you have customers. You probably have a lot of loyal customers. So go figure out who can be your early adopters, or perhaps pilot things with you and try things with you and really understand the pain points. Again, not to just provide technology, but to really understand how you can be more helpful in a digital world. Creating an app just for the sake of creating an app, say a mobile app that's going to complement something that you've already been offering on a website, or again, trying to do something creative with AI or machine learning, is it going to register as something that's useful for your customers? And again, iterating over and over again to understand it, not going out once, talking to 3 customers and coming back and saying, now we know what to build. No, you don't, right? You've really got to iterate on that. So I think it's my biggest advice is just get out there. There's this sense that startups are supposed to be the ones that are scrappy. And I guess that's the last point I'll put on this is later stage companies. I was at VMware, we were massive near the end of my time there after 8.5 years. And we were still going out and doing super scrappy things with our newer technology, right? We were coming out with a solution for mobile phones before iPhone existed. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to get carriers to adopt what we wanted to do, putting virtual machines on mobile devices back when most people had BlackBerries. But we knew it was coming. And we didn't just go and talk to the carriers. We actually started to find early adopters or companies that might be thinking about how their employees might put virtual machines on their phones by creating very, very scrappy MVPs and just asking a few employees at these big old companies to just do it. That was scrappy. And we were essentially a legacy company at that point. Maybe not, but close enough. We were big enough and mature enough that was kind of crazy for us to do. But we had the space and the freedom to do it. So I guess that's the other piece of this is legacy companies need to carve out time to really do this right, and people and resources, and protect it. Running innovation both at VMware and it's part of my job as a VP of engineering at Akamai was doing these carve outs and actually finding teams of people who, not just the smartest in the room or the PhDs, but a nice cross section of folks on your team to really have protected time to go explore these things, or you're never going to get there. And if they're seen as an extra, that if we have to do budget cuts, especially in these times, those are the first things to go, you're never going to move your business forward. And so they should be as valued as the activities that you're doing for your core business.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful. I think the idea that you can be scrappy even at a big company and listen to your customers, that's the other thing. You're right. I mean, it's funny how you end up with one set of customers and then you get nervous that they're going to go somewhere else to this sort of digital disruptor. And I'm amazed how many companies just don't take the time to go talk to that customer. Like, what's interesting about the digital part of this disruptor?
Right.
And maybe putting that on our platform, but again, not for the sake of technology, to your point, could be so powerful. I'll tell you a funny story. I met someone who was hired into a large bank, and they came out of the digital first world. They were so excited. They told me that this bank had hired them, and one of their big goals was to drive their daily active users. And I just remember thinking, I don't know that I want to use my bank app every single day. Like, I'm not really sure that that's a goal.
Yes.
Like, you should be, sort of an interesting mindset of like, not really thinking about their customers, just thinking, that they had heard that this was something they should go do. And so I really like your advice of sort of don't just pick technology, just don't do the things you think you're supposed to go do. Like, really go talk to some customers and be scrappy about it. It's really powerful.
Yeah, and on that point too, I want to mention that the metrics to measure, to your point exactly, of what says success for this thing that we're about to do, right? So the example I'll use is like open table. You don't want people in there all day, every day, right? And measuring in and out is really important, right? I want someone to be able to get in, make a reservation, and get the heck out, right? And you could say for a banking app, it could be, I want someone to be able to deposit their check, take a photo of it, and get out. It's not how long they're in there and how active they're in there, right? Transactionally, short time is actually better than like maybe a social app where then I want them in there all day, right? So I see that mistake often. Yep. of like, what does success look like in this particular level of engagement?
Yeah, and going back quickly to your point about being scrappy in a big company. I mean, I love that idea of just experimenting and trying things out. We work with quite a few big companies that are working to become more customer centric. And they're building these large programs where there's a lot of change management involved. And that's one way to go about doing it, sort of like one avenue, but it's a big lift. And being able to find some resources to do some scrappy work as well, alongside some of those big kind of mandates that the company is driving. I think it's a good complement, and just sort of another way to think about how to shake things up a little bit. So in addition to the advising and the lecturing, you're also the founder of Good for Her, which is a nonprofit community for women founders that fosters their growth as they, navigate these entrepreneurial journeys. And so for our next insight segment, we asked user testing contributors who were also women business owners some advice and what they'd advise other women entrepreneurs on. So let's listen to what they said.
Knowing now what you didn't know then, what advice would you give yourself before starting your business? I guess don't kind of bite off more than you can chew, because I had kind of grand plans about, how I wanted to start and what kind of inventory I wanted. And I feel like I probably should have, planned smaller, and it would have been easier for me to grow gradually.
So I'm still pretty new to it, but I think like even in the short period of time, couple months that I've been doing it, it would just be to don't be so hard on myself.
I think that you need to just go for it. You need to just try.
Make a list of priorities. Make sure that you create a budget, a deadline, and try to stick to it.
And getting yourself out there is probably one of the most important things you can do. And, face your fears and do that. I think when I started, I was a little shy and definitely didn't take chances and connect with as many people as I probably could have.
Don't be afraid to ask questions from people who've been there before you, because a lot of the probably some of the best advice that I've gotten have been from people who've are entrepreneur themselves, and they lived it, so they kind of have tips that you can't really read in any book. So that would definitely be number one. So listen to people who've been there before.
It's okay to make mistakes, and everyone will make mistakes. And what defines you is how you bounce back from mistakes, not what caused you to make them in the first place.
I think that you should also, any positive feedback you get, any successes, keep them in a folder, keep track of them, and read them when you're feeling low.
Don't let the difficulties and challenges turn you off to pursuing this. It's every business will come with its challenges. Every business has people telling, or every product will have people saying that they don't like the product. It's not always for everybody. It doesn't mean that you have a bad idea or if you don't have a bad product.
I think every entrepreneur should know that nothing is off the table, and that success is measured personally. And so you don't have to have a $10 billion business. You can have a side business, a side gig. You can, make cookies. You can clean cars. You can mow people's lawns, all different types of things. And so I really feel like no matter what age you are, no matter what you got going on, you really need to understand that the sky really is the limit. Success is measured how you want it to be. And you can do something that doesn't have to be all consuming. It doesn't have to be severely expensive.
One piece of advice that you just gave was echoed in that segment, which is starting small. So your point about we the people and starting with sort of a very sort of narrow kind of, I don't want to say narrow, that sometimes has a negative connotation, but sort of like starting with a focus, not having to build this big, huge thing, but starting with something small and focused. And a woman entrepreneur basically said the same thing. So that stood out to me. What stood out to you, Julia?
Yeah, there are a few things there. I think one of them is defining what success is. And this is actually the opening segment in my course. I ask all my students to think about what success means to them. Not what their parents think, not what their friends think, not what their former professors think, but what does success look like to you? It doesn't always have to be money. It could be you've built a beautiful product. It could be a lifestyle business. It could be a lot of things. And a few folks in the video mentioned that as well, is you get to decide what success means to you. The other is this resiliency around feedback, right? I mentioned this earlier that we practice this in my course. This feedback dilemma of hearing 6 different things about what I should go do next with this product, or some people hate it and some people love it. How to parse that is really, really hard, because at some point, and I bet, back in the early days of UserTesting.com, it was the same thing. Like, what's most important right now, and what signal am I getting, and what am I deciding I'm going to listen to? It's super, super hard for founders to do. So those are 2 things that jumped out immediately from listening to the videos, and something that I try to instill upon all the founders that I work with. I'll even say, when I give feedback, take it or leave it. I'd love to understand if you don't take it. If you do something else, I just want to learn and understand from you why you took that direction, just for my own learning, but not as a judgment call. But I do this for a living. There are a lot of people who give feedback who get insulted or hurt or concerned or judgmental if they're not heard. And I think it takes a strong founder to be able to decide what they want to do and communicate that well.
Awesome. We're going to move into our lightning round. So this is a series of questions that we ask everyone that comes on the podcast. So first, we'll start with, what's a book that you've recently read that you'd recommend to our listeners?
I always hate this question, only because I never want to answer just one book. So I love this question because it makes me want to say a million things. So I'm going to say 3. So the first one that I recommend to everyone I coach and mentor, as well as my students, is Brené Brown's Dare to Lead. Love this book, read it several times. It's so thoughtful in terms of who we are as leaders. And the number one takeaway is about integrating humility as a leader and being vulnerable. And the more vulnerable you are as a leader, again, whether you're a product leader or whether you're a CEO, founder, having that humility and understanding empathy for your employees and your customers, so critical. So I love that book. So I highly recommend that. The second one is The Psychology of Money. And it sounds very tactical, but it's actually quite interesting in terms of how we as human beings think about money and how it stems back to our childhood and our upbringing, and how we bring that into our personal and professional lives. And it's an assigned book for my course as well. But I do see interactions, and you think about it right now, whether it's with your partners outside of work or inside of work, how we respond and react to how we spend money, our budgets, how we think about pricing, how we think about fundraising, all stems from our personal interactions with money and a lot of baggage that we bring in. So the book does a great job helping you understand that, as well as how to think about long-term goals and strategies around money. So then the last one I'll mention is Bird Girl, only because I am a birder. Became one during COVID. I know I'm not alone. There are a lot of people who've become birders since COVID, and it's not out yet. So shameless plug for a new book that's coming out. It's written by a very, very young woman who's an environmentalist, and her story about how she became a birder at 6 years old and how she's still a birder. And it's just a fabulous story. So if you wanted something entertaining, that is one I'd recommend.
Those are all great recommendations. I'll have to check out the bird one and The Psychology of Money. I do love Brené Brown. She has a great podcast as well.
Yeah, she's unreal.
She really is. She really is. What's one piece of advice that you give to someone trying to convince others to invest in customer feedback?
Best advice I'd give to someone who's trying to convince someone else to get customer feedback is that the magic happens with the convergence of your customer feedback and your own ideas. And so just having your own ideas by yourself is not enough. And it's that, again, science behind innovation is the compounding of ideas on top of each other and bringing in lots of things versus just having tunnel vision and only thinking about your own ideas. So the value in customer feedback, whether that's interviewing, whether that's doing concierge simulation type tests, whether it's ethnography and just watching customers in their daily lives or doing what they do and just learning and understanding where their pain points are by observing, all of those things are value add. So doing discovery, whether it's manually or using a great tool like UserTesting.com or whatever it is to really get that feedback is invaluable and critical for the best products out there. Shameless plug. You can cut that part out.
We love shameless plugs.
They seriously do promote the product all the time. Just saying, it's not because I'm on this podcast, but I really do.
Yeah. We appreciate that. So last question, when you think about the future of product management, over the next 5 to 10 years, what are you most excited about?
So I'm most excited about product management right now because it's finally here. It's finally, for years in my early days of PM, we were sort of the sidekicks that were the easy roles to cut if things weren't great or misunderstood employees and businesses. And I finally see that product management is not only valued but held in a high regard in organizations in a way they never would. So what excites me the most is the opportunity for individuals who want to get into product. The growth opportunity is insane. I'm seeing former PMs of mine who are now CPOs, chief product officers, to founders of their own businesses with great skills because they were PMs. As we know, most founders are their first product managers in their companies. So I'm just pumped to see what's possible in terms of the role. And then the other side is the tools. Again, I think what's available now out there makes being a product manager so much easier than it used to be when you have tools that can do high fidelity prototypes that a product manager can do versus needing to pay an engineer to do that. They're so empowered with tools that are out there right now, from data capture, again, tools like UserTesting.com and others to be able to interact with customers they weren't able to access before. Video, there's just so many things now that are available to PMs that just give them superpowers that, again, when I first started out in product, were just not even conceivable. So super exciting for a product manager right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Between a lot of the material and sort of guidance that they have, whether it's through books or taking courses, to the tech, I mean, yeah, it's a very fun playground for the product management space right now.
Yeah, completely. And the pace. I mean, the fact that you can build and ship stuff globally so quickly now. Like, it's a very rewarding job, whereas back in the waterfall days, you'd have an idea and it would take you 12 months to get it into market, and then you'd find out it was slightly off, and then it's like another, so it's sort of, it does feel like a magical time for being in product management right now. So I think that's a good perspective, Julia.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that part up too, because that's something that, again, breaking those old habits of waiting and seeing and saying, what's keeping you? We're not worried about IP as much anymore as we used to be, and being stealthy is not really a thing anymore unless you're building some really strong IP that you have to protect. But just get out there and start learning and look what's available to you to do that. It's phenomenal. So exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Julia, I'm so thankful for you joining us on the podcast. I'm so fortunate that we got a chance to connect a few years back. So this has been fantastic. Thank you for all of your expertise and guidance here during the episode.
Yeah, it was really great.
It's a delight for me as well. I always love talking about these topics. So thank you for having me.